morning. You're listening to Caregiver Crossing. It's a podcast brought to you by Joy's House, and we are so happy that you're here. Caregiver Crossing is a podcast created just for you, the caregiver. I'm Terri Stacy.
And I'm her friend, Tina McIntosh. That's what she always says. We're here every week. We get to talk with experts from across the country to provide comfort, resources, and joy to our caregivers. So this podcast serves to embrace family caregivers of today and tomorrow, and we're grateful that you're here.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Kate Washington. She's writer, editor, she's a recipe developer, and she's the author of Already Toast, Caregiving and Burnout in America. Already Toast tells the story of Kate's struggle to care for her seriously ill husband, offering a revealing look at the role unpaid family caregivers play in a society that fails to provide them with structural support. And Kate, we are so happy that you are here. Thank you for joining us. We're going to jump right in. I want you to tell us a little bit about your experiencing becoming a full-time caregiver.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. I first became a caregiver to my husband in 2015. Our kids were little at the time, or littler than they are now. They were 9 and 5 when my husband was diagnosed with a very rare form of T-cell lymphoma. And I really became a caregiver unawares. I wasn't thinking about caring for people other than in the context of caring for my kids, who had just gotten to elementary school. So I actually thought my caregiving responsibilities were easing up in a childcare scenario. But Brad, my husband, started to experience symptoms. It took a long time to get diagnosed. It took an even longer time for me to think of myself as a caregiver because I was still wife, mother, juggling freelance writing career, doing all kinds of other things. And being in an advisory role, going to appointments was not really something I thought of as having, a job title until his course of treatment really changed when he became much more seriously ill. At first, it was thought that he might not need very much treatment, that it might not change his life very much. But the cancer turned very aggressive. He had emergency chemotherapy. He relapsed very quickly and progressed to a bone marrow transplant, which was absolutely devastating. He was in the hospital for 4.5 months. This was in 2016, and he came home blind, unable to eat a full diet, in need of 24-hour attendance. So as you can imagine, that really changed my life and really made me a lot more aware of what the millions of caregivers across America, like your listeners, are going through every day.
Kate, I'm going to ask the question that I know a lot of people want to know. Is Brad still with us?
He is. He had a long road recovering from his bone marrow transplant, and he still does endure chronic illness. He has something called graft versus host disease that really continues to affect his life. So he is retired and disabled, but is still alive. Excellent.
Well, tell us, you hit something that I think just about every caregiver thinks about at some point. Often it's after their loved one is no longer here, is I'm a caregiver, because you're doing the duties of a spouse or of an adult child or a loved one in general. And so what was it for you that all of a sudden you realized one day, I am actually in the category of a caregiver, because that I know was life-changing for you?
Yeah, I would say it was a slow recognition. And I think it probably is for a lot of people. You mentioned adult children of people, many people, the story is it sneaks up unawares as mom or dad starts to have memory changes, or you notice something that's off. And for me, I think it was really when my husband came home from the hospital after his first emergency hospitalization, and they told me that he needed IV antibiotics. And I said, well, so there'll be a nurse coming. And they're like, oh no, here's the nurse to train you in how to put them into your husband's PICC line yourself. And I really was shocked at the amount of medical care that I was expected to administer. And in some ways, that was really part of what galvanized me to write this book and tell the story of how many caregivers nationwide are doing really intense forms of care for their loved ones with pretty minimal training and often even less support.
Okay, so I know Terri is like dying to talk about this book. First of all, the title Already Toast is brilliant.
Yeah.
But Terri, I know you have questions, so I will I'll sit here and
No, it's okay
listen.
because I know you do too. And, as you said, already toast caregiving and burnout in America. I think from what we have learned on Caregiver Crossing, it takes a long time before a caregiver says, I'm burned out, because maybe they don't even know they're burned out. For you, when was that moment that you said, I think this is burnout?
Well, that moment is actually what gave me the title for the book. It was after my husband's bone marrow transplant, and he was at home needing that 24-hour care. And I took him to a doctor's appointment, came home from that just devastated, exhausted. The doctor had told me, that I needed more support. So I Googled, and I got sent to an online quiz testing whether I had caregiver burnout. And I took the quiz, and the result that it gave me was "You're already toast," with a picture of a burned piece of bread. And that was a real stark wake-up call about the degree to which I was overextended. I was exhausted, irritable, resentful. It really sapped a lot of the empathy and the caring that I wanted to be giving as a caregiver. And I think that that's really common for a lot of people. The demands of ongoing caregiving, the average duration of caregiving in the US is 4.5 years, and the average number of hours a week is something like 24 hours a week. That's just an incredible toll that can take on caregivers over the course of many years. And there's so many people in America who are facing that kind of challenge every day in and day out, with very little relief.
You're hearing the voice of Kate Washington, who is a lot of things, one of which is the author of Already Toast, and it is a book about caregiving. Kate, you just said the average length of time that a caregiver cares for a loved one is 4.5 years in the United States. We know that, it depends on where you look it up. 1 in 3, 1 in 5 of us is currently a caregiver. I don't care if it's 1 in 3 or 1 in 5, it's a lot of us, right? I want everybody just to stop and think for a minute. We are on this side of a global pandemic that has taken over 2 years. So let's just call it 2.5 to be a little generous, right? So about 2.5 years, and how long and how exhausted and how burnt is a weird word, but I can't think of another one. Just exhausted we really are from this pandemic and what the toll it's taken on us emotionally and physically. Caregiving is more than twice that long on average, and takes an additional 20 hours a week for the caregiver. 20 hours, that's not magic. You don't go find them somewhere. It comes out of your regular week. And so it's a lot. And so my question for you, Kate, is when somebody picks up this book, I can't wait to read it. When somebody picks it up, are they going to get, and I hate to call it a story because it's not a story, it's your life experience with your husband, Brad, but are they going to learn more about that journey with you? Are you going to give them practical advice? Like, what comes to them from these pages of the book?
Yeah, so the book is part memoir and part really cultural criticism, looking at the structural factors that make caregiving so challenging in the US today. The lack of structural support that we have as a society for caregivers. It's a little bit less of a traditional how-to, and there are so many books out there that do that really well, and as well as amazing online resources for caregivers. What I really wanted to look at was to answer the question that I had for myself through caregiving of, why is this so hard? Why is it emotionally so hard, financially hard, just really challenging in all kinds of ways? The burden falls disproportionately on women, which is something that I look at intensely throughout the book, but I do really tell my own story. And I tried to be really honest about the emotional toll that it took. And one of the things that's been really rewarding in the book, the aftermath of the book coming out, is hearing from caregivers who say that they saw themselves, or they felt more recognition of what they were experiencing through the challenges of their own journey, some of which were similar and some of which were very, very different, from reading the book. Because I think sometimes those difficult emotions around caregiving are things that stay hidden, or that many people don't feel comfortable talking about.
What do you want to see changed? What needs to change and change now when it comes to the help or what resources or what is number one for you?
The first thing I always say is paid leave, that people need a right to paid leave so that working caregivers can take the time they need to care for their loved ones without fear of losing their jobs and without so many financial repercussions. I think also just greater cultural recognition of this role would go a huge way. We're a very individualist society. We're encouraged to be self-reliant, to not ask for the help that we need, and a more community-oriented approach to caregiving, because it's something we're all going to go through. We're all going to need care, or we're all going to need to give care, or both. So I can just see so many places where we can change that for the better and offer people better support.
Kate Washington, I cannot wait to read Already Toast, Caregiving and Burnout in America. I feel like your next book is going to be a book of solutions for us as we're looking at what healthcare looks like in caregiving, particularly in the United States. So I'm so grateful. I'm assuming people can find Already Toast anywhere that they buy their books.
Anywhere books are sold. Yes, it's on Amazon, on all the online sellers, local bookstores, all over the place. And the paperback is out this month. So.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to hang up here on our podcast and get my copy. I'm very, very excited to read it. And I have a feeling we're going to be talking again and doing some work together for the good of all caregivers, in our nation and beyond. So, Kate, thank you so much for what you're doing. Prayers to Brad and the kids in you. And we will look forward to talking with you again soon. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you so much.
Well, we are going to close the show for this week. Want to remind you that you can email me again, Tina at joyshouse.org. If there's someone you want to hear from on Caregiver Crossing, if you have a question, if you're, in your own caregiving situation and there's something you'd like us to help you sort through, it's part of what we do here in Caregiver Crossing. It's what I do at Joy's house in my day job. And so please feel free to email me at any time. And then Joy and Terri are going to kill me here, but I can't find my notes on AARP. But what I can tell you is they sponsor Caregiver Crossing. They are fantastic people. They're doing great work, and they are reshaping the way that we look at aging in our nation. So thank you all for being here. We will be here again next week on Caregiver Crossing. Until then, take good care of each other.